Welcome to the St Emlyn's podcast. I'm Iain Beardsell,
And I'm Simon Carley.
and we are recording in the midst of a heatwave in the UK. It is very, very hot, and we're actually going to be talking about blog posts from way back at the beginning of this year. Simon, we have got behind, and we're going to do our best to catch up. We'll be talking about February, but before we do, probably worth just refreshing a couple of things. And firstly, congratulations to you being reappointed as the Dean of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine. Triumphant news. You must be delighted.
I am actually. It's a job I've really enjoyed because it makes a huge difference to the future. Because a dean's job is all about generating the next cohort of clinicians in emergency medicine. So yeah, really excited. Loads of stuff going on, loads of problems to sort out. Gosh, loads of many things to sort out. And the whole of the NHS is being reorganised. So we've got to find a way through that. But yeah, the future's bright, but let's keep ourselves on track and make sure that we've got fantastic clinicians working in our emergency departments in the future.
And since we last spoke, you have been in Hamburg at the International Conference for Emergency Medicine. That looked rather tremendous. It looked like a stadium gig. We had echoes of the old Smack days with the great big screen in the middle of a 360-degree stage. But it looked like the Germans had done everyone proud.
Yeah, they were really good, actually. So the organising team, led by Martin, absolutely superb. They brought a sense of festival to the event and to Hamburg. Hamburg's a really interesting city, actually. You get the opportunity to go, it's fabulous. And got caught in a massive rainstorm, got drowned almost on one day, ate some great food, had a couple of nice beers. The 360-degree stage, if anybody gets offered one of these in the future, absolutely go for it. We're all pretty much terrified about how it's going to work being in a relatively small platform with 4 screens above you, almost like you get above a boxing ring, I suppose would be probably the best analogy. And you know what? It was far easier to work with than anybody thought. It worked really well. You felt really close to the audience. And it really had a much stronger sense, I would say, of engagement between the speaker and the people who are watching and engaging. I thought it was great.
And you've also been in Glasgow at Don't Forget the Bubbles. You do get around, Simon.
Yes, Don't Forget the Bubbles, superb. What a wonderful group of people and a fantastic website. That again, I got involved in 2 things. One was talk about how to do the fundamentals extraordinarily well, which if you read the blog post about this, you'll realize is actually a bit of a contradiction, but also makes sense. So I really enjoyed that. And then I also did a workshop with Rusty, who's a long-time friend, on feedback. And that again, particularly with the paediatricians, and Don't Forget the Bubbles, what an incredibly engaged group. They were so much fun. They took part in all of our exercises with gusto, so much so that we had to get told to quieten down and make less noise on numerous occasions, just because they were just a great bunch of people. And yeah, if you get a chance to go to either of those conferences, so IFEM is in, let me think, where is it? Yeah, it's in Kuala Lumpur, which would be great if you can afford to get there and get the time. And I appreciate that's difficult for some people. And Don't Forget the Bubbles is in Perth, Australia.
And of course, just a little thank you to Galen and Intersurgical, who've continued to support St Emlyn's over the last year. None of this, although it's called FOMED, free open access medical education, there is actually costs associated, which often are borne by Professor Carley personally. And thanks to those people, we have been able to help support the podcast, support the blog posts, and keep things going. And as ever, thanks again to any of you who've tried MedPod Learn, downloaded it, given it a go. And that's going on. And yes, it's doing its thing. But Simon, let's get on to some clinical medicine after all of that. And we are going way back to February, which is hard to imagine in 31-degree heat. But in the winter time, we were at the Big Sick, and there are 3 different blog posts about all the top papers there, which we will cover one day. But the first post we can get to in February is another one of your trauma team leader tips. And I think these are really useful. If you get a chance to see the whole series, then please do. And this was about CT reports. Why did you feel it was necessary to write a blog post about CT reports? It seems pretty obvious that they are what they are.
They are, except when they're not. So CT is in trauma particularly is the diagnostic tool as well. It's a secondary diagnostic tool after your own eyes, hands and ears. So you should always examine the patient first, of course. But CT is where we're going to get definitive information that's going to tell us what surgery is needed, if at all, and also a lot of prognostic information as well. So it's really important. Now, the reason why I put it in is because I've seen errors made over the years. First thing is get the patient to CT, obviously get it done. The report that you get back. So the first thing I say to everyone is go and have a look at the images yourself. Don't just wait for the radiologist. And that's for 2 reasons. One, I think it's part of your education, part of your learning that we as emergency physicians should be able to spot life-threatening injuries on a CT scan. Gives you an early heads up about what's going on. But of course, you're the person who has examined the patient or had that information. And therefore you can hone in on particular areas that you've got concerns about, which the radiologist may not have the same feel for when they're doing their scan. The second thing is the first scan that you get back is really just a primary survey. A Bastian type scan in an adult is going to create thousands of images, literally thousands of images. And the report that you get back after the patient's been around for 10, 20 minutes, they haven't looked at all those pictures. They just can't. They're giving you a primary survey of life-threatening injuries. And so have a look at yourself, realize that is just a primary survey and use it accordingly. That's fine. It should be there to spot any life-threatening injury. But always, 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 always try and speak to the radiologist before they report it or after they've reported it, so you can give that extra bit of clinical information or any uncertainty or concern. I think probably everywhere. All of these scans get a second or sometimes even a third reading. So the second reading will be where somebody goes through all of the scans and has a look at them and tries to find the injuries. That's usually a more senior doctor. The third reading might be where it goes to a specialist. So for instance, it might then go to a neuroradiologist for subtle findings around brain injury, etc. I think there's a real concern that people don't necessarily always wait and look for those second and third imaging reports until they make decisions. And the big worry that I've had and where I've seen problems go wrong is where somebody's been to CT, they've come back, they've had a negative CT scan report, which is incorrect. It's a non-positive scan, which is really just the primary survey. And that patient has either been discharged or not followed up at the appropriate time and subsequent harm has taken place. My policy, and the one I recommend, is you don't discharge the patients until you've had the full report from a senior radiologist who's had that opportunity to go through all the images as a secondary read. So yeah, that's the summary. The TTL report that we put up has probably got about a tenth of that number of words. So have a look at it. I've put it in a form that you can share really easily with other people. But yeah, share the learning, share the love.
And tell me what you mean by a Bastian scan.
Okay, so the standard Bastian scan is a plain image of the neck and the head. And then it's basically from the top of the clavicles down to mid-thighs or in some places beyond. It's then a plain scan followed by a CT angiogram. There are triple scans and things that you can do as well, but the Bastian is that. In some places, they do an enhanced Bastian where they'll also do a CTA of the neck. And that's possibly something you should consider doing in patients who suspect blunt carotid vessel injury, BCVI. But the standard Bastian is the one I've described. Plain above the collarbones, and then it's a plain and a CTA below.
I think CT is a really interesting thing, isn't it? Because we work really hard to get the patient to the scanner, and it's one of our targets that we have as best practice tariff type targets. So we work really hard to get to the scanner, and then attention kind of drifts a bit if your patient's hemodynamically normal in the scan, and you've usually got one person who's staring through the glass, looking at the monitor while everyone has a bit of a catch up until the radiographers get cross with you for making too much noise. And then you come back to the resus room, and then it seems to me all forward momentum is lost. And everyone just sits back. I've got the scan now. I'm kind of done. And actually, that's the bit where I get really nervous, because that's the point in time where all the excitement of that patient first arriving has kind of drifted away. The initial scan results are okay. Oh, this isn't for me because it's not my specialty, whatever. And that's the bit that I find most dangerous, is that actually we aim so hard to get to scan quickly, but it's about the work you do once you've got the scan and you get back that actually is probably more important.
I can't agree more. Maintaining momentum is an absolute key skill for a TTL. And one of the things I talk about in subsequent TTLs is exactly that, about the TTL having their mind in two places, what is happening now, but also planning for what's about to happen in 10 minutes time. And the reason why you do that is because when 10 minutes then arrives, you're already prepared, you're already prepped, and the momentum keeps going. But yeah, can't agree more.
And while we're on a TTL thing, let's just talk about log rolls. Again, I can't imagine why you'd think a whole blog post was necessary, Simon, but again, I'm sure you will tell us.
Yeah, so I think log rolls are done really badly, to be honest, a lot of the time. First question is, why are you doing a log roll? So I can think of several. One is to remove debris from behind the back. Second is to look for other injuries. So in things like penetrating trauma or injuries where there may have been additional wounds, etc. If you're going to do a PR, which you probably shouldn't be doing, if you're going to send them to CT at that particular time, making it later, then you're going to have to log roll to do it. But so it's generally speaking, it's to aid examination, which is largely inspection and removal of debris. The problem with log rolls is if you have a poorly trained team and you rotate your patient over to 90 degrees, there's plenty of evidence that you get quite a bit of spinal movement, which is what you want to reduce, really. It's also extremely painful for the patient if they're awake. I mean, it can also increase hemodynamic instability. It can disrupt clots. It can do all sorts of things. And if you've got a massively mashed pelvis, even if you're in a pelvic binder, if someone then rotates you onto your side at 90 degrees, or you've got a whole bunch of fractured ribs, you can imagine that's not going to be very nice, is it? And also, we don't need to do it. So the way I suggest you do it, and the way it's been taught on all the courses that I work on, is that you get your team in position, standard positioning, and use a specific term of words, which is not, is everybody ready? You say, is anybody not ready to move? because it's easier to answer that question if you've got a problem. And then you rotate the patients with the head end bleeding just 6 inches off the bed. Somebody stands on one side, gets down on their knees. They can feel all the way down the back. They can examine the patient. They can do any procedures that are necessary at the point. They can remove any debris, and then you bring them back. And if necessary, you just whiz around the other side and do it again. You can get people onto scoops like this. You can get them off spine boards like this. You can get them off vacuum mattresses like this. You can do all the things that you need to do with minimal movement. And that's the whole point. I've also got a big thing about the 1, 2, 3 thing, because when you do 1, 2, 3, lots of people think you go 1, 2, 3 and move on the 3. And lots of people think you're waiting for the 1, 2, 3 move. So is it 3 or is it 4? And that's another reason why I don't like using that. I guess better, it's an attack thing. Is anybody not ready? Silence. Okay. On move, we'll move. Ready, steady, move. You're done.
And again, just to clarify, by attack thing, you mean the course, ATACC. You don't mean an attack as a verb.
No, Anaesthesia, Trauma and Critical Care, which is a course run out of the northwest of England. Great organisation, fantastic people who have got a lot of learning.
It's the little things that frustrate, isn't it? And how many times have you been in a trauma where one end of a scoop stretcher can't get undone? And everyone looks around, usually to the strongest looking person with the strongest looking thumbs. But there are techniques whereby those clasps will come undone easier. And you've described it there, that way in which you brace laterally and push downwards and upward. And that's how you do it. There is a technique to getting those things undone. It is not about brute strength.
100%. So I can take any scoop stretcher off with minimal pressure, with no struggle and no difficulty. You just need to know how to do it. And it's difficult to explain it verbally. I think you need to go and read the blog post. But essentially, it's all about aligning your clasps.
So that's a bit of trauma team leadership. And there'll be more in podcasts to come, I'm sure, because I know that we're already up to double figures for those tips and they're really valuable. And I think the key for these are you don't have to be a trauma team leader to get benefit from them. If you take any part in trauma or even human factors, it's all part of the same thing. And we're doing human factors all the time, aren't we? Whether you're in major seeing a patient and asking somebody to help you with something, all the little hints and tips and tricks that we've learned over the years. Cliff Reed taught me so many of them when I was a registrar with him about how you can just gently nudge people in the direction you need to and get things to happen. And worth reading. Don't just dismiss them saying, well, I'll never be a trauma team leader. Actually, there's lots in there. And it helps you be a better follower as well, I think. If you understand the leadership, and followership is probably a more important skill at times than leadership, even though there's far fewer courses in it, it turns out. Natalie did a post about feedback, and it's actually a link to a talk she's done to do with feedback. And I know you and Natalie have been talking about feedback for years and years, and you've just done a workshop on feedback at Don't Forget the Bubbles. It's more than a topic than we can cover in 5 minutes, but this is ever more important. And I guess as Dean of the College, examples of really good feedback and perhaps some examples where it's a little bit lacking and even could be damaging. What's your top tips for feedback that you might add to Natalie's post? I do recommend everyone goes back and has a look at that video that Natalie's put together.
Yeah, go look at the video because there's loads of different things in there. I could give you many different tips, but I'm going to give you one today, which is one of my favorites because it's free and incredibly easy. So when we give criticism or critique, we usually give a reason for it. So I would say something like, Iain, I'm not quite sure that I enjoyed your introduction to the blog post today because your voice was higher than usual. So I give a reason for it. Actually, it was fine, Iain. I loved it.
Thank you.
So there's a reason. When we give positive feedback, we rarely state why. We'd say something like, Iain, loved your entry to the blog post today. It's great. That's it. There's nothing. It's got nothing value to it. And so all I do is invite everybody and try this. It's absolutely game changer. I cannot tell you how effective this is. All you do is next time you give positive feedback, you go, that was a really great job with that log roll. Because what you did is you actually put everybody in sequence and you only brought that patient 6 inches off the ground. And that really helped with their pain relief. That was fantastic. Well done. And all of a sudden, everybody will remember that. It's sticky. And making positive feedback sticky makes you look better. It makes the people feel better. And it makes the learning stick. What could be better for the use of one word? Because.
And I think that is really applicable even at the end of a shift. So when you're thanking your team, if you say, oh, thanks for your hard work today, it kind of feels a bit of a throwaway, doesn't it? It's like we say to anybody. But if you add it, thank you for your hard work today. By the way, when you did that referral to the general surgical team, I thought it was really concise and it clearly got the message across really effectively. And that leaves that person going out of the door with a little spring in their step with something to take back and something to think about as they drive home. And something that might just remind them when they're looking back on the shift that day that there are good things. in our emergency departments today, there's always a problem, isn't there, in the NHS healthcare or across the world? But if you can give people a positive to take away, that's the bit they'll remember.
Yeah. And here's a little exercise for everyone out there. Ask yourself, do you give more positive feedback as opposed to criticism? And most people will say, oh, I give more positive than negative. And then ask yourself, of all the trainers you've worked with, did they give more positive or negative? And the vast majority of people say, oh, I only ever get negative feedback. And I go, well, is it that you're the only person in the world who's like that? Or is it the fact that negative sticks and positive goes nowhere? And it clearly is. I've seen this sort of data all over the place. So yeah, you can do something to make yourself look better. One more. How awesome is that?
And make people feel a bit better. And that's always a good thing. Simon, it's great to catch up. And that is a lightning whiz through our post from February. I promise everybody listening, we will be back sooner than you can imagine with March. And there's more to come. And as ever, thank you for supporting St. Emlyn's. We really do appreciate it. Thank you for subscribing to the podcast. Do tell your friends. There are many medical podcasts out there, all of high quality. And we are happy to try and support them all, both through our work and through MedPod Learn. I did have a colleague, Simon, recently who, when I said I thought medical podcasts were a valuable addition to education, they said, yeah, it's just a couple of people talking, though, isn't it? And I did think to myself, yeah, but sometimes listening to people talk through things is exactly what we need because it helps us think too. And there's lots of podcasts out there. So go and discover them. But thank you again for listening to St. Emlyn's. We will be back with you very soon to chat through March's blog posts. And for now, please do take care.